Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is part 2 of the remakes of the original Final Fantasy VII. It's a phenomenal game, and I had an absolute blast playing through it. But I'm seeing critics rate this game a 10 out of 10, and some people irresponsibly calling this Game of the Year already. I'm here to tell you that this game's probably more of a 6 or a 7. That's not a bad rating, but this game is far from perfect. And if I hadn't played the original Final Fantasy VII, I think that this game would suck.
This was my favorite feature in The Last of Us, so I'm glad that they have it in here. Oh, it's even slower than in Last of Us. Okay.
Like, genuinely, I'm sorry to say, this game is riding on nostalgia. A lot of the story just doesn't really make sense unless you're involved in the deep Final Fantasy VII lore. Like in the original game, the story just kind of goes along at a nice brisk pace because it's trying not to bore the player. But in the remake, it kind of just feels like everything's really padded out so that they can drag out the story as long as possible.
Use a cushion to rest. Spoiled rich ass, like just sit on the bench.
I will say that Rebirth is definitely better than part 1, but in a lot of ways it feels like it barely expands upon certain things. Namely, the combat has barely changed, and a lot of the open world or open zones in this game feel kind of pointless. Like, for example, in the FF7 Remake part 1, you could fight summons as a boss, and if you defeated them, you unlocked that summon for yourself. You can still do that in Rebirth, but the difference is that now you can find these stones in the open zone areas that will make the summon weaker when you fight it. My point being is that they took away a feature and stuffed it into the open world area to make it feel like it had more value. But it's just Final Fantasy Remake with extra steps. It's a smart way of inflating playtime for sure.
This was pretty damn cool in The Last of Us, so I'm glad that Sony forced them to put it in this game.
But there's a lot of things that just don't really make that much sense as far as a modern video game is concerned, and to rate it a 10 out of 10 is just irresponsible because that automatically throws this game into the category of Zelda, Baldur's Gate, Elden Ring, and stuff like that. In which case, this game is good, but it ain't that good. Quantity over quality is a very good description for this video game.
Oh, dear God!
You gotta understand that I'm looking at this game through very harsh, very critical eyes, and I'm trying to distance myself from my bias of the nostalgia I have for the original game. Pretending for a moment that I didn't play the original game, this is a mess. Final Fantasy XVI is basically the exact same game, but better in a lot of ways. The only difference is it doesn't have Cloud as the main character, so nobody cares. Now, I won't go into spoiler territory, but I did just want to mention one of the biggest driving forces of this game, which is going to end up being the story for most people. While I enjoyed a lot of the character interactions, I feel like the script could use some work. A lot of the times the voice acting just felt completely soulless, and I don't blame the voice actors for that, I blame the director. But there's also just a lot of scenes that happen for the sake of nostalgia and fan service that don't make sense for the overall plot. See, the added benefit of playing the original game is I know exactly where the story is going. But Square Enix seems to have this idea that they need to change things up to surprise fans, which I'd be okay with if the new stuff was even half as good as the original plot, but it's not. It's bad. Like the fact that they're just ripping off Marvel's multiverse and making Sephiroth Thanos. It's like such a cop-out.
Oh, here we go, dude. Oh my God, let's go. Let's freaking go. 10 out of 10.
Sorry, this review's kind of gone off the rails, and that is solely because the ending in Rebirth completely spoiled the entire experience for me. Like, it was just Tetsuya Nomura's usual contrived monkey brain Deus Ex Machina BS. It's so disappointing to me because there's clearly a lot of passionate, hardworking people behind these projects. I wish I could jump on board the hype train and just be excited to know that there is more coming down the pipeline. Like, the world is beautiful and the music is majestic as all hell, but I can't help but feel like most of that is owed to the original creators from over 20 years ago. Square Enix is milking this cash cow for everything that it's got, and it's a damn shame because I remember when they were Squaresoft, and they were the top dogs when it came to JRPGs.
Yeah, this is game of the year.